Hello, everybody. This is Q&A with Dr. A. My name is Brent Agin. I'm a medical doctor in Clearwater, Florida. And so today we got an interesting topic because we are just about to approach the end of 2022 and on to 2021 and on to 2022. So, um, you know, everybody talks about New Year's resolutions and things that they would like to do differently in 2000 or in the next year. And that becomes pretty important for a lot of people because that means change and change is important for everybody. And life is always changing. We have to live very dynamic lives, and so but when it comes to wellness, there's a lot of opportunities. And I always kind of talk about our overall health as a society. And as many of you might know, hopefully you do, you should recognize is that our society is not one of real solid health. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. But I think when you kind of look at your wellness journey, you should really kind of take it as that it's yours and it's your journey. And you don't want to be a statistic. You want to kind of start with some of the basics. But when you're talking about New Year's resolutions and really finding something that you can do and actually complete. And it should be something that's going to make a big impact on your life. And, really health and wellness should start with happiness. And, it's not, weight loss doesn't necessarily always make people happy. And, stopping drinking doesn't always make some people happy. Stopping smoking, there's, eating sweets there, you got to think about what is really important. And especially after the last couple of years, this is a time to make a major impact on, for yourself and think big for the next year. And so, start with that. What makes you happy, and you kind of evaluate how happy you are, because happiness is not given. It is something that you create for yourself. And to create something, that means change. And so really, I say is our happiness is really a part of our discipline and ambition. And that's the good thing, is that how happy we are in life is really what we put into it. And so, happiness is something that's going to take a lot of effort, if you really want to find it. And so you think about when you're looking at New Year's resolutions, start with that. Say, what is the main thing that I could change or do next year that is going to make me the happiest? Because when you're happy, you are going to do a lot of things on your own. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, in a sense, or self-fulfilling goal that you have that you can keep adding on to. So if it's weight, if it's your drinking, if it's your smoking, if it's relationships, if it's your job, whatever you are going to commit yourself to changing, think about happiness first. So when we're looking at what opportunities you guys have, again, think about what you really need for yourself, and then something that you can actually do. So when you do say, hey, this is my New Year's resolution, January 1, this is what I'm going to change, just make sure that something that's achievable and that you're committed to doing it, because you do want to start off your new year with change and then grow off of that change. As we know, most people's New Year's resolutions come right after the holiday season, and you will find that that diet is usually on the top of most people's minds. That's because 80% of us are overweight or over their ideal weight, and a good percentage of that are actually into a concerning weight. And so, but that doesn't always mean that's necessarily the first thing that people have to think about. It's again, what is the most concerning to you and what makes the most impact on your life. But diet seems to be one that's always important. And so what I like to tell people, especially when they're thinking about dieting, as their New Year's resolution, to consider a couple things. The first is weight loss is highly focused on not just the way you eat, but the rest of your lifestyle. And so, a lot of times what people say they're going to do on their New Year's resolutions is say, okay, I'm going to start an exercise regimen, or I'm going to go on an eating program or an eating strategy or a diet. But you got to think that, doing exercise without changing your diet, you're picking a bad New Year's resolution, because going to the gym and exercising, it it's just not going to be as effective. So you got to think about that, because I'm sure you guys have all seen people that are just, they're at the gym every day, or you see them walking by your house or jogging all the time, and you watch them over months to years, and they really never change. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that run 5Ks, that go to the gym all the time. They have all these, they have personal trainers, but nothing really changes physically. And that's because you cannot do just exercise without having the eating strategy. So this is kind of, I'm kind of pulling you into what I talk about all the time, which is lifestyle, and that is sleep, diet, and exercise. So if you're going to make a real change, you're going to make a change with your diet, you have to start exercising as well. Now, if you're at a weight that really isn't conducive to exercise yet, you still can do something more than just being active. Even if it's walking longer distances, walking, where you handle using weights, walking a little bit faster with your arms pumping. There's things that you can do differently. So getting in kind of that kind of mindset of saying, okay, well, if I'm going to go and change a diet and I want to lose weight, you have to have the exercise part in place too. And I'll throw on top of that sleep. Sleep is something also that if you're going to change your eating strategy and you're going to start, progressively adding exercise in, then you also have to think about your sleep cycle. And so I'm going to kind of break it down into each one of these: sleep, diet, and exercise, because lifestyle is really what should be everybody's New Year's resolution. Yes, you can pick smoking. Yes, you can pick stopping alcohol, but all those really fit into lifestyle. And if you're making a commitment to look and feel better, both mentally and physically, those components of lifestyle are going to come into play at some point. So I think that if you look at the most impactful thing that you guys can do as a New Year's resolution, it's going to come down to something that's going to hit all of those components of changing your lifestyle. Because as you keep doing that repetitively, you can change behaviors. But you get a lot of different comments on what's important for changing lifestyles and or changing behaviors, and most of the time it is taking a certain amount of time for you to change behaviors. And sometimes people say 2 months, sometimes they say 3 months, some say 6 months. I like the 3 month mark. I think if people really adhere to changes for 3 months, in a lot of cases, they actually can see that they've committed to a different regimen. And so you probably heard me mention the Carb Revolution program. And what I'm going to do is break that down into pieces and say it's not necessarily that you have to do this specific program, but I want to make sense into the components of the program and why we put it together, because each of them are very important and they all work together. And that's what's important. So if you're going to really try to get 2022 kicked off the right way, this is a nice way to put yourself after 3 months into a complete different health position than you probably have been in a long time. And if you're one of those people that are just trying to, we're very healthy, and then COVID and different things in life, really set you back, then this should be just a reset. And so, but let me go into a few of these phases. And so the first thing we'll talk about is the importance of the sleep. And when you start looking at sleep, the main things that you're going to want to do is to create a good sleep cycle. And as you know, sleep is created by hormones. It's all your whole circadian rhythm is complex, but sleep itself is really a balance of your cortisol declining and your melatonin going up. And we are naturally, based off that circadian rhythm, it is thought that the sleep cycle that is created between 10 and midnight and getting up between 6 and 8 in the morning seems to be those sweet spots for allowing your hormones to really put you in that sleep position the best you can. And so, when you look at the deep stages of sleep, you have, well, some people say there's 5 stages of sleep, some people say there's 4, but either way, there's non-REM and there's REM, and that's rapid eye movement. I usually go with 5 stages of sleep. There's 4 stages of non-REM, and then there's REM. They're usually in 90-minute cycles. And so in your sleep period, you want your deep stages of sleep are going to be in that stage 3 and 4 non-REM, And then that is the most important. And then obviously your REM, which is when you dream, is also important, but it's not that rest and recovery period that you're going to get from your deep sleep. And so if you're someone like me, I track my sleep. I look at what I am achieving in my deep sleep and in my REM, just because I am trying to maximize that recovery period because it's just that important as far as aging goes, having the energy to get the maximal workouts and also helping with suppressing your appetite. And so you're going to want to be somewhat in the it's about 20 to 25% of deep and about 20 to 25% of REM. So 75% is in non-REM and 25% is in REM. And in that component of non-REM is that stage of deep, which you're shooting between 20 and 25%. And so, things that are going to help you with sleep are the activities of your day, what time your sleep cycle is, how much food you're eating, how much water you're drinking, how much exercise you're getting, what you're doing to decompress from stress. All these things affect your deep stages of sleep. It is a project, but it's well worth it because once you have it down, you just repeat. And then even people that are really trying to be an architect of their sleep cycles are still going to have those days where they just don't sleep as well. But that should be something that is few and far between once you have that process in place. For instance, I'm one of the people that if there's a full moon, forget about it. It's just something, and most of those times I have to, take something like NyQuil or Unisom just because otherwise I'm wide awake and just want to stay up all night. But in general, though, if you start kind of considering the importance of sleep and build that into your day, adjust your sleep cycle, and start looking at how the exercise and diet is going to play in, you see how they all fit together. But one of the other things that a lot of times happens with people that have bad sleep, and I can tell you, a vast majority of people are dealing with insomnia. It's very common because we live stressful lives, and if we have an inability to turn our stress off, then that means your cortisol and melatonin aren't going to be changing at the same time, and your cortisol will be spiking, throughout the night. And that's when you just wake up at that same time every night. You fall asleep fine, and then at 3 o'clock in the morning, bing, you're awake. That's usually cortisol, and that means that somehow your adrenal glands and your stress response isn't being managed by your body. And so, what people will do is they will try to go to bed earlier, trying to compensate for the fact that they're going to be up multiple times during the night, and that obviously isn't going to help either. So, I always like to backtrack from the time you want to get up in the morning. So if you want to get up in the morning at, say, 6 o'clock and you're trying to go to bed at 9 o'clock, it's really not that feasible for you to achieve that many hours of sleep. So usually you shoot between 7 and 8 hours. You can shoot for 8, but a lot of times people don't even get 8 quality hours, and that changes as we age. And so shoot for 8. So that means if you're going to get up at 6, then you would go to bed at 10. And so that's kind of how you have to look at it. So make sure you're not trying to create a sleep cycle that isn't really, it wouldn't really be something you can achieve. So if you start with that, then you can kind of start setting your sleep cycle, and then you have to start working on exactly how you're going to prepare for sleep. Because as you know, when you have insomnia, just thinking about going to bed creates anxiety, which is, you can in turn kind of consider that as stress. So you're already messing up with getting your adrenal glands pumping out your fight or flight hormone, and you're setting yourself up for failure. So once you kind of commit to the sleep cycle, just keep doing it over and over. Try not taking naps during the day. Just try staying to that sleep cycle. And if you have to take certain supplements before you go to bed, that's fine. There's some really good teas that have chamomile and lavender and magnolia bark and valerian root. And for some people dream too much with it. But there are some good supplements out there that if you need it, but just be careful on the melatonin, because melatonin is a part of this whole process. And so, I hear people sometimes taking, 9 to 20 milligrams of melatonin, but you're starting to basically be asking to have sleep problems down the line, because that's not a sustainable approach. You want your sleep cycle to be something that you work hard during the day, you have a good sleep cycle, you fall asleep, you stay asleep, and that's all based off of having that lifestyle in place. And so just remember, sleeping, the sleep wake cycle, go to bed between 10 and midnight if you can, get up between 6 and 9 or 6 and 8. If you're one of those people that work out early in the morning, or then that's fine. If you sleep good, that's not a problem. But if you're struggling with sleep, you just have to start with looking at your sleep cycle. And then if you're really struggling and you want to really get into the nitty gritty part of your sleep cycle, you're going to have to get either an Aura ring or use one of the Fitbits or Apple Watches, which I like the Aura ring just because it doesn't disturb me having something on my wrist. And it only took me about 6 months to really figure out exactly what I needed to do to get that 25%. And at 51, that is something that's really, really nice because it started out, as we age, we have to get our deep sleep in the early cycles of our sleep. Those 90-minute cycles end up, it's a lot harder as we age to get deep sleep if you're not getting it in those first two sleep cycles. Younger people are blessed. They can have deep sleep all through the night, which is great. I know people that are in their 30s and 40s that get, somewhere around 2 hours of deep sleep. I'm just shooting for my hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. But I also really can't sleep past 6.5 hours. And so, but I do get my equal 20 to 25% of REM, 20 to 25% of deep, and I wake up rested if I can achieve that. So it is a little bit of a science project to get your sleep down, but it's well worth it. And that will be a huge part of then getting into the diet and exercise part, because that is when your hormones regulate. That is when your appetites, both your satiety and hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, also regulate, and that's how you're going to match good sleep with good exercise and good diet, which is really going to be important for when you're trying to really get that lifestyle in play. So next thing we'll talk about is exercise. Again, just remember, people have to understand the difference between exercise and being active. I get a lot of clients that come in and they talk about how that, are you exercising? No, but I'm really, I'm always on my feet. I walk at my job all day. That's great, but that's being active. That's not exercise. Exercise is really based off of your heart rate variability, and also including some form of resistance training. And so you can start with aerobic. You can start with just improving, doing something more than just being active. So if you're walking, 3 miles every morning, but you're not seeing the changes you want in your weight, that's because you're probably not getting your heart rate up high enough to actually be effective. And so there are a lot of different ways you can calculate what your target heart rate is. That's very easy. I'm not going to waste time going into those calculations. You can find that very easy by Googling it. But that is what is the important difference is it's just not being active. It has to be exercise. And I do also say that just don't focus on the aerobic, because you really need resistance training for your bones. You need resistance training for maintaining muscle mass, and you need resistance training, which is basically pushing some form of weight, whether it's body weight, resistance bands, or actual weights. You need that because that's also what's going to make it a lot easier for you to achieve your weight targets, because you burn more calories when you're doing weight training and doing resistance training than you do with just aerobic. That is why you also hear me talking about doing high intensity interval training, because that form of training you get your aerobic and anaerobic at the same time. And that simple concept goes back to the P90X if you're my age, or but there's been several other high intensity interval training companies, at T25. I mean, you can find so many different, even on social media now, there's people posting their interval training or cycle training workouts, which they kind of range from 20 minutes to about 45 minutes. But normally it's about a 30-minute exercise. And by doing it and picking these various exercises and not taking long breaks between it, and adding one aerobic exercise like jumping jacks, jump rope, small sprints, stairs, elliptical, a rower, and then along with some other exercises, or doing a circuit in the gym using the machines, you're going to find that you can really get a great burn, a great calorie reduction, or a calorie burn, and in a short period of time. So then that also takes the time component out of it, where people say, I just don't have time to exercise. Everybody has time to exercise, especially when you can do it 3 days a week for 30 to 40 minutes per session. And so if time's an issue, high intensity interval training. You also look at the science of high intensity interval training, and it actually shows that you can burn calories longer doing that form of exercises than just resistance training alone or just aerobic exercise. So there's a lot of information out there on high intensity interval training, and you can for sure find great routines with not much effort. But again, you want to work into that if you're not exercising a lot. You just start with some of the aerobic and then do some band work, or you start at a low level, high intensity interval training. I think you probably really can look back to some of the TV shows where they'll have three different people doing it. One's doing it super aggressive, one's doing it moderate, and the other one's just not moving very aggressively at all. It doesn't matter where you are as long as you're starting with something that's more than just being active. So if you have that New Year's resolution and it's going to be, I'm going to go walk 2 miles a day starting the new year, that's just not enough. Unless you're doing speed walking, wearing ankle weights, wearing wrist weights, or getting your arms pumping, that should not be your New Year's resolution. You need to get in and get with a personal trainer to get taught how to exercise, or find one of these programs that you can follow and progress as needed. So a little bit of recap before I get into diet is sleep, the importance of sleep, just remembering you have to get into the deep stages of recovery sleep. And in the New Year's resolution, I'll talk a little bit about alcohol as we finish, but to get into those deep stages of sleep, you have to work at it. You have to do what you need to get those deep stages of sleep. If you need to invest in some sort of apparatus to track your sleep, it's worth it. And then exercise, you have to do something more than being active. You have to get some form of resistance training. And also remember I'm 50, so if as we age, exercise becomes the number one most important component of lifestyle for brain health. And I always talk about brain-derived neurotrophic factor and nicotinic adenine dinucleotide, which is a mitochondrial energy compound that we need. Both of those are increased with deep stages of sleep and also with high intensity interval training. And so now let's go into diet. And so diet, again, if you're going to make a commitment to changing your diet for a New Year's resolution, you really want to have the sleep and exercise in place too. It seems like, I just wanted to do one thing, and that was my big commitment, was just to start, eating differently. If you don't have the exercise in place, then that is why most people don't complete their resolution or don't actually maintain the results, is because you don't have the other pieces in place. So why not just kind of stop before you fail now and just realize that the reason that we have 80% and increasing overweight or obesity rates is because just doing an eating strategy or just doing an exercise strategy isn't enough. They have to be done together. So that's why I love Carb Rev being our main conversation for New Year's resolutions, because it includes all those components. So as we get into eating, if you're going to do, again, and your New Year's resolution is all about changing your diet, then try to do something that's sustainable. Crash diets are what they're called. They're crash. The crash diets aren't necessarily bad, but that is for someone for 1 week to 2 weeks that has an event or some reason that they need to lose 10 pounds. Well, there's so many different strategies you can do to lose 10 pounds, but that doesn't mean that's not a diet. That's not a sustainable eating program. And so, I've spent a lot of years trying to figure out what is the best way for people to have the best anti-aging, feel the best, and the most sustainable eating program that's backed by science. And I didn't create intermittent fasting. I'm just telling you that is the one. I've tried so many different eating programs, both with clients and myself. I always try everything that I am going to push to patients on myself. And I'm almost 9 years into intermittent fasting, and my body fat hasn't changed. It's simple to maintain. There is a little discipline on getting into it, but it is still an amazing approach to eating if you guys are looking for something that you can get to and then never look back. And so, what we did with the Carb Rev is not just do intermittent fasting, which I'll explain a little bit more, but we also paired that with carb backloading. There's a gentleman named John Kiefer that wrote a book called Carb Backloading and Carb Night Solutions. He had his master's in science and really was the first component of eating that and exercise that I adopted, which was just backloading carbs on the day I worked out. And there's some science that he will share with you that is kind of contradictory to what we were kind of taught growing up about how you use your protein with exercise, but it's a really good book. And so what we did is we kind of combined his information on carb backloading and combined that with intermittent fasting, and really got a very easy approach, that's kind of like that work reward approach to eating. And it's like, and you want to get to that spot where the days you exercise, those days you have carbs for dinner. And we'll talk a little bit about the numbers, because people also a lot of times get confused on how much protein they should eat, how much carbohydrates they should eat. And so again, you want something simple. We've seen through the years, almost everybody that comes in to see me that is interested in losing weight, they're either lifetimers on Jenny Craig or Weight Watchers. They've tried the stimulant-based diets using phentermine or phentermine. They've tried keto, which was Atkins, and guess what? They're still looking for eating solutions. That tells you that diets have to be a sustainable approach. And I'll always tell you, do not do anything or spend a lot of time on this New Year's resolution and pick an eating program or a diet that cuts out any of your macronutrients. So if you're going to do any program that says that you eat no carbs or low carb for the whole 3 months, what are you going to do then? Are you never going to eat carbs again? Well, of course you're going to, and that's what causes people to fail. So you have to find something that is, if you want your crash diet, that's fine, but that's not a New Year's resolution. If you're really trying to change your weight or your really approach to eating, so then pick something that's sustainable, that has all your macronutrients. And I'm not saying intermittent fasting is the only thing out there, but I can tell you that it does have all your macronutrients. It's easy to follow. You don't need a program to calculate all your points. You don't even really need to necessarily count your calories or breakdowns of your macronutrients, but sometimes it's pretty helpful, because also what happens is people don't realize how much they're eating until they really write it down. So food diaries for a week it can be very helpful, but most importantly is just understanding the science, that intermittent fasting is a science-based way to get your body adapted to burning fat more efficiently. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So, right now we're all used to carbs, 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 and that's kind of what runs our whole eating. Back when, I'd probably say, well, at least when I used to look at the food pyramid was the majority was carbs, and then protein, and then fat. And unfortunately, you still see some nutritionalists that still try to push that same pyramid. But if you push that right now onto the people in the United States, we'd see our obesity level even go farther up. So I like to stick around starting your eating program with protein. Because notoriously what people do, especially women, is when they try to go on a diet because they want to eat better, or a New Year's resolution, and not a crash diet, but just what they feel is the best way to lose weight. Of course, they cut out all their carbs, potentially going to even under 30 grams of carbs. They usually cut their calories down somewhere between 500 and 1200, and then they never get enough protein. So you can see, you cut your calories, you cut your carbs, and you don't eat enough protein. So you're getting some fat, you're getting some vegetables, and you think that's sustainable. Well, it's of course it's not. And you don't realize how quickly you're going to fall off of that when you realize how little you're eating and how much you need carbs to fuel your body and your muscles, especially if you're not doing it the right way and actually getting into ketosis, which we'll talk about a little bit after this. So you can see that notoriously that's what happens. People drop their calories, they drop their carbs out, and they don't get enough protein. So you will start cannibalizing your own muscles to fuel your body. That's how it works. And there's a term that we use, it's called skinny fat, and that's where people can lose weight, but they lose their muscle too. And yes, they can look okay in their clothes, but that doesn't mean they're going to be healthy and look good out of their clothes, because they lose their muscle mass. And so again, it's pairing sleep, diet, and exercise the right way, so you can actually achieve physically health, both mental and physical health, and as well as cosmetically. What do you want to look like? You can achieve whatever you want, but let's put health first. And you'll hear me say also is you should never risk health for your diet. Health is first. And so if you think about that, don't ever go on a low under 500 calories for too long, and don't get rid of any of your macronutrients. So if you're planning on going a diet that doesn't include all the macronutrients, is too low in calorie, and that was your New Year's resolution, then I just helped you. Um, so now when we're looking at protein, protein is a pretty easy calculation. As if you're an athlete and you're trying to bulk and build muscle mass and you're young and healthy and vibrant, well then you can go up to a pound to a pound and a half, or a gram to a gram and a half of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're 200 pounds, that would be 200 grams of protein to 250 grams of protein. But as we age, or if you're not aggressively working out, then I would focus more somewhere between like 3/4 to a 1 gram of protein per body weight. And so that would, if you're 200 pounds, that's going to be somewhere between, around 150 grams of protein. And so if you start with protein as your main food that you're targeting, it's really easy because it's not that hard to do some quick calculations and get down how much meats, fish, protein, or seafood, or pork or chicken, protein shakes. You should be able to calculate your protein intake pretty easily. And if you look at what the calories are from that protein intake, then you can surround your healthy fats, your vegetables, and your carbohydrates around that. And so if you start with protein, that really becomes your nucleus, and then you stay low carb until those days that you're going to work out. And so that's kind of the easy way to approach the diet part of it, is start with protein, make sure you're getting your protein goals in, because again, we're working on our sleep, we're working on our exercise. Start with protein and vegetables, and then your carbohydrates and fats. Fats are pretty easy because you can kind of surround yourself with healthy fats: avocado, cottage cheese, some cheeses if you're not lactose intolerant. But then when you get to your carbohydrates, now this is the other tricky part, is because when you're really becoming an architect of these behaviors, you really have to look into what your carbs are going to look like when you backload them. And what I mean by that is that if you're working out really aggressively and you're trying to maintain muscle mass, you're burning a lot of calories, you store your carbohydrates in the form of glycogen in your liver and your skeletal muscle, and we store about 500 grams of carbohydrates in those two areas, and you will burn through those through just your just normal activities of life. It's called your basal metabolic rate, and these are just what you need to have your body survive. And then beyond that is you're going to burn these glycogen stores through your exercise and your activity levels. And so deciding on how you're going to backload your carbs is going to be really dependent on how aggressive you're exercising. And so if you're someone that is really hitting the gym hard, doing a lot of resistance training, then you're going to have to eat more carbs than the person that's not. And so here's the other thing that can happen, is when people are trying to get this regimen in place, they go work out and then they go jump on the carbs on that day to backload. They said, "Oh, I worked out today, now I get to eat carbs." But then they eat too much carbs for the level of exercise that they're doing. They think they're exercising aggressively, but when you start backloading the carbs, they start seeing that they're not losing weight efficiently. And that's because they're probably not exercising as aggressive or intensely enough to justify the amount of carbs they're eating. So what I would say is that when you're looking at your carbohydrates, start on the lower side. And so if on a normal day that you're not carb backloading, you're staying under, 30 to 50 grams of carbs, then on the days you are exercising, what you can look at, because you can read a lot about carb backloading. Sometimes they can get into 2 and 2.5 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. So now you're talking 400 to 500 grams of carbohydrates. That's like bodybuilding people, and that's like people that are really aggressively exercising, even if it's swimming, cycling. But for the average person that's doing high intensity interval training or exercising 3 to 4 days a week, I would say start out with kind of doubling your carbs. So you go up to 100 grams. And then as you start increasing your exercise, then maybe a gram per body weight. So a 200-pound person would be 200 grams of carbs. But then likely, if you're really exercising and wanting to put on muscle mass, then you can start moving into that 1.5 to 2 grams, which is justifiable because again, it's science. I mean, you refill your glycogen stores, and you use that to power the body. You burn through them. You replenish them with your carb backloading, and so you can kind of see this little pattern that we're talking about, and that's why we call it the carb revolution. As far as our eating program, we wrote that all based off of telling people that don't give up your carbs. Continuous keto has been around forever. It's a hot topic still right now because it does equate to weight loss. But if you're not careful, you'll get yourself into that position where you start noticing that you're not maintaining your muscle mass as well, or that you just get burnt out and you want more carbs. And so just be careful about staying on continual ketosis because we need carbohydrates. It's part of what still fuels our brain, and it is important to refill those glycogen stores so our bodies run the way they're supposed to. And talking a little bit about again on the intermittent fasting, normal intermittent fasting periods that get the best results is going to be a 16-hour fast with an 8-hour feeding, and you want to do most of your fasting while you're sleeping. So a very common one is finish your eating at 8 o'clock and you start your eating at noon the next day. So just kind of wrap your head around that, and then on those days that you're not exercising, you're staying at under 50 grams of carbs, and then on the days you exercise, you get those carbs. You increase those carbs on those days, which is called carb backloading. Now, also remember, if you're in a spot where you have quite a bit of weight to lose, obviously you're gonna want to stay on the lower side of carbs, more into that keto mentality until you start getting some body fat coming off, before you start really looking at how you want to incorporate the exercise reward with the carb backloading. So that is the end goal, is to get that same amount of get the ability to backload the carbs on the days you exercise. So I'm going to do kind of a little recap because the other part that comes in with New Year's resolutions is alcohol. And again, I can't stress this enough that alcohol is okay, but you should really think about it if you have kids. The way I grew up, at least with my kids growing up, is that we didn't have sodas in the house, but yet if we went on vacation, if we went out to dinner, we went over to celebrate at some friend's house, I would let my kids have sodas. And if you think about that, that is kind of the way you should approach alcohol. If you're really trying to make a change, you don't have to just cut alcohol out unless you have an alcohol drinking problem. But it fits the whole, concept of the New Year's resolution that includes all of those, because alcohol is going to be part of that. If you're doing intermittent fasting, that means you can't have alcohol past 8 o'clock. If you don't have alcohol past 8 o'clock, that means you're going to get into the deeper stages of sleep, because alcohol causes you to not get into deep stages of sleep. It keeps you in light sleep. So people wake up and they slept all night and they go, oh, I slept all night, but they never feel rested. And that is when most people drink, is right before they go to bed. So you can kind of throw alcohol into this whole New Year's resolution if you're going to really say, I'm going to change my lifestyle for the new year, because alcohol is going to be immediately controlled just by your decisions on your eating. And if you're exercising and you have an intermittent fasting eating strategy, you do that for 3 months, and you're going to start realizing that alcohol notoriously is a huge cause of being overweight. The people that do cut out alcohol by themselves, just, I'm not going to drink for 90 days, they feel amazing when they're done. I mean, it's 100%. Everybody feels better when they cut out alcohol. But then they usually feel better, feel good enough that they start drinking again, thinking they can control it, and then they're right back to drinking again like they were. But if you have a lifestyle in place, you're going to start realizing that why are you going to sabotage all the results you got for alcohol? When it's a depressant, it decreases your brain-derived neurotropic factor, it reduces your deep stages of sleep, and I can tell you, I did almost 15 years of inpatient detox. I was a medical director, and if you want to see drugs that age you quickly, alcohol is one of the biggest ones. I got to watch people through those 15 years, repeated admissions for detox, and alcohol will age you super fast, and there's plenty of reasons for that. So work your alcohol consumption into this whole New Year's resolution of just changing your lifestyle. There's, just like the soda theory, you can also say, there's no reasons to drink alone. especially if you can't restrict it to the 1 to 2 drinks that has been shown to improve good cholesterol. But if you're going to drink that and you have control and you have your 1 drink a night, that's fine, but just get it done early in the night so it doesn't start making you have to go to the bathroom and also affecting your deep stages of sleep. And then the last I'm going to leave you guys is don't try to commit yourself to too much. I'll use an example of drug detox. When I was doing medical drug detox, these people would come in and they're there to get off of a certain drug, and then they'd say, "Yeah, I'm going to quit smoking at the same time." And I would always say, "No, no, no, don't do that, because you don't want something to cause you to fail." And so you don't bite off too much. Just try to focus on something that you can achieve, and then once you get to that point, then you can work on the next one, because you don't want to fail at this. I mean, you don't want to commit yourself to this New Year's resolution and then find yourself ending up biting too much that you can chew and then failing. And then you're right back to waiting till next year. And that's what happens. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. So, pick something right off the bat that you think that you're going to be able to achieve. And I'm just highly suggesting that you just go at it as a lifestyle change. And you just commit yourself to sleep, diet, and exercise. If you work hard at all three of them together, you do that for 3 months, you're going to come out, feeling good and feeling like you have control. And by completing that cycle of lifestyle change, that is the real way for you to get the complete moderation. And that is what lifestyle is. It's moderation. So it's not that you can't have and enjoy life. I mean, not that you can't enjoy the foods that you should eat, not that you can't go on vacation and drink more than normal. That is what moderation is if you get your lifestyle in place, you'll get yourself feeling the best you can mentally and physically. And that is what allows you to take off days. And so, it's fine to go on vacation. It's fine to go and celebrate, but you have to have that moderation. And so even if you did this, which really comes down to kind of that rule that, people talk the 80-20, the 90-10 rule. If you're doing this 80-90% really solidly, that's what gives you that extra 10 to 20% where you can do whatever you want. And it leaves people saying, well, how do you stay in shape? How do you look so good? How do you feel so good? Why are you always so happy? That is moderation. Moderation is what is going to be the key. And that is exactly what this lifestyle changes that we just talked about is going to put you in. It's going to put you in a position where you can still go enjoy yourself, but you have all the work in place to be successful. And I promise you this, if you put the work in after that 3 months and you're in the groove and the lifestyle is set, your body is responding, the maintenance is the easiest thing you could possibly imagine. And I promise you that is that once you get to that point, I can tell you because I've done this for so long, everybody looks back and goes, man, I don't understand how anybody is overweight. It's that easy. It doesn't take like going to the gym every day. It doesn't take 2 hours in the gym. It doesn't mean you can't eat anything you don't want. It just is getting it under control. And when you get the response from energy, happiness, and your body where you want it, so you have your confidence, you like what you see in the mirror, that makes you feel good. And at that point, you're complete control. You're almost it's that governor or your filter that keeps you from ever going, falling off. And then the other most important thing is that it's self-correcting. Is when you have a very good lifestyle, it's very easy for you to see, why is my body changing? Why am I not feeling the same? Because if your sleep's in place, your exercise in place, your diet's in place, then you know it has to be something else, which is usually hormones, and at least you can go get your hormones checked. So if you have all the variables removed, then it's very easy to self-correct, because you can look back and say, okay, yeah, I stopped exercising. Oh, yep, you know what? I haven't been sleeping the same, or, I started drinking too much, or I haven't been going to the gym. And then you can self-correct before you gain all your weight back. And that's my biggest pet peeve, is when someone can lose 25, 50, 100 pounds and gain it all back. So that means that they didn't have one piece of their lifestyle in place, because if you have them all in place, you're never going back. So that's it. I hopefully this is helpful for you guys, but just remember, think big for 2022, and just kick off a new lifestyle. Kick it off on Saturday, and don't look back. Give it 3 months, and you will appreciate it, and it is really easy to maintain. So the carb rev is easy to do for 3 months because it's structured. And then, obviously look at a lot of the other products we have, but this keeps it simple. It's not expensive. So even if you're doing it on your own without the carb rev kits, sleep, diet, and exercise, do it all at the same time, because you may as well, if you're going to do one, do them all, and then you won't fail. So thanks again. It's another Q&A with Dr. A, and I'll see you guys next week.